Sam Darnold throws 3 interceptions, but the Vikings survive anyways and win 12-7. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to my hashtag everydayers who have been with me all season long, all off season long. I appreciate you all so very much. Coming to you from a hotel in Jacksonville today. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Today on the show, we're recapping the Vikings' 12-7 victory in Jacksonville. As ugly as an ugly road win gets, it's hard always to complain too much about an ugly road win. It's a road win. Those are hard to come by, even against bad teams. But obviously, there's a lot to be happy about and a lot to not be happy about. So we're going to go over that. But we're going to start with what the defense did here. But worry not. We will talk all about Sam Darnold's interceptions and what the offense did outside of that and everything else that went down in Jacksonville. But I think the headline of this game, as this sort of digests and we get a minute to chew on it, and as you're listening to this, you've probably had a night to sleep on it, you think a little bit more about, wow, Brian Flores' defense is on a heater. And I know it was Joe Flacco and Mac Jones, two backup quarterbacks on offenses that weren't that good in the first place, that were struggling anyways in the first place. Last we talked, we were sort of sure, but not 100% sure that you would have Mac Jones in this game. Did turn out that Trevor Lawrence was just completely inactive. And you had now this Mac Jones thing. And that turned out to be as ineffective as you thought it would be, which sometimes you go into a game with a backup quarterback and we all get Cooper Rush flashbacks. So it was nice that that kind of thing didn't happen. There was really one drive where the Jaguars actually moved the ball. They got like 3 explosive plays. It was the second drive of the game. I feel inclined to mention that Blake Cashman was not on the field for that entire drive. And if there wasn't like a super like clear proof that missing Blake Cashman was hurting the Vikings. So I want to go into what I think is going on there, because it's just one off-ball linebacker, right? Like putting in one backup off-ball linebacker shouldn't cause your defense to fall apart that much. And I don't think every facet of it was falling apart. The Vikings did a phenomenal job against the run all day long. They got pressure on Mac Jones all day long. That has nothing to do with the off-ball linebackers. But what was happening on that drive did. So when they have had Cashman off the field, like the last couple of games with Cashman out, or that one drive where Cashman, it looked like he played the first drive, the Jags go 3 and out. And to my eye, I was looking for him on the sideline because I was at this game, so of course why I'm in Jacksonville. And you could see him kind of like putting weight on it and like really testing it out that whole drive, seeing like that turf toe might not have felt 100%. So they pulled him for a drive to see how it felt. And then he ended up playing out the rest of the game. So I think that whatever test they were doing, the answers were good. And during that drive, they went back to the backup plan they had in the last few games, which was to put Josh Metellus in that role. Metellus or Kamu Grugier-Hill, who's slowly but steadily kind of been losing that job to, let's just go dime personnel and go with Metellus. So there are a few issues with that. Metellus has been a little bit slow on some of the more like linebackery run fits, but also I think the main thing over the middle, when he's backing off into middle zones, right? What Metellus is used to doing is from the line of scrimmage, right? Show blitz, then back off into whatever your zone is. But for an off-ball linebacker back into that zone, and then what he has to do is instead of just hit a landmark and hope the sim pressure gets there, in a normal coverage situation, which he had to do that kind of thing in a normal coverage situation, he had to back off into the right window, and there is like a feel for it that you have to have. That if you talk to people who coach coverage or talk about like what linebackers have to do in coverage, a lot of times you are sort of use your tape study, use your instinct, and feel where a window is supposed to be, and you sit in that window best you can. And a lot of times you got to have eyes in the back of your head to do that. It's a very difficult job, and it's one that linebackers don't do well all the time, and it's very normal. But Metellus was either not dropping back far enough a lot of the time, or he was just kind of brain falling out and dropping to the wrong place. And it's not his job, right? That's not the world that he's supposed to live in. So I don't really blame him for struggling there, but that was this very exploitable thing. And there was 3 games of tape on it. So my guess is that the Jaguars went through the whole week going, we don't know if 51 is going to play or not. Let's prepare as if he is and as if he is not. And for the world where he is not in the game, they had this game plan of attack the middle, do everything the way the Rams and the Lions did against this defense with that. And whatever they decided to do with Cashman in the game clearly didn't work at all. But what they decided to do without him in the game was, the same thing that everybody else had done. And so they hit a really big one over the middle. You also just gave up an explosive run off of, I think it was a duo that just like bounced out to the outside and somebody missed a tackle. And then that goes explosive. That's just making a mistake. But after that, it was true and utter domination. Just like wire to wire after that drive, just complete thrashing from the defense to the Jags offense. And, we repeat this chorus a lot when you play a bad team because every schedule's got a few bad teams on it, right? But when you play against a bad unit like the Jags offense with Mac Jones, right? And ask any Jags fan and I did ask Jags fans, and they were all like, yeah, no, this is not a good team. So I'm not talking trash. I promise. I'm quoting other Jags fans. But when you play a unit that's like that, you want to smoke them. You want to make them feel like they can't function, like they are not playing in the right league. And I think that's kind of what you did. So the defense has a lot to be happy about. And I don't really care about the strength of schedule aspect of it. I think they hit what my expectation would have been for that game. Not to mention, as things got dicey down the road with all the problems happening on offense, we'll get to that. But as things got dicey down the road, turnover. They really showed up and clutched up, right? Now, the first turnover was really more the Jags screwing up. They mess up a snap. Ball falls down right in front of Harrison Phillips' face. He falls on it. Okay, great. Awareness, you drill that. Happy for you. But it's not quite as good of a play as the Byron Murphy interception is, where he just is in front of, I think it was Gabe Davis. I don't know why Mac Jones threw that. When he lined up to throw that and I looked downfield as to like where people were, I was like, who is he even throwing? Is it that? Oh my God, it's that? Yeah, that's a pick. It was a horrible throw. But that's being rewarded for being in a really good coverage position. Usually your reward is not getting targeted. Sometimes your reward is you get targeted and you just get to catch it. So that's very earned. And then the one to Cam Bynum, it was this floaty one you get hit as Mac Jones throws. You get a hit from Blake Cashman there, by the way, who was doing, it was almost the same play that he made against San Francisco when he got that sack against Purdy, where he was crashing on a stunt and he like busted through he just crashed it so well that he busted through and like they overplayed the looper and then they just left Cashman alone and he got to go get the sack. I thought he was going to get a sack there. Mac Jones gets the ball away just barely, but he's hit as he throws. The thing hangs up there forever and Cam Bynum catches it. And then on that, I did want to mention, because somebody was asking me and I didn't know the answer to it. So I looked it up. What was the deal with that call at the end, right? Where the Cam Bynum catches it and the offense goes out there and they're ready to run a play from the 20. And after all the celebration and all this other stuff, they go, wait, actually it's under review. Like took forever, which I thought was a thing this whole game. Like this whole game took forever. It felt like there was a lot of extra breaks, but maybe that's just me being live and not being distracted by commercials all the time. But anyways, they review this, and what they end up saying is that the Vikings have the ball, but on the 1 yard line because of where Cam Bynum's knee touched the ground. So I thought, what about like momentum carrying him into the end zone, right? So I looked up this rule, and that rule, like that could not have been a more perfect application and like textbook example of what that rule is for. It's exactly right. So I wanted to like clarify that. So the way the rule is if you catch the ball and your momentum carries you from out of the end zone to into the end zone, just like on that play, wherever you establish possession, which in this case is when Cam Bynum's knee hit the ground and he was on the 1 yard line, that's when it is established that Bynum has caught the ball and has possession. Whenever you have possession, if your momentum carries you into the end zone and then you're downed there, which is what happened, then the ball goes to wherever it was that you established possession. Think of it as them giving him forward progress as his momentum carried him backwards, which means that you get the ball, and just by kind of a stroke of bad luck, you need the ball on the 1. So the Vikings needed to like sneak it once so that they could get there. And then the game ends on this horrible, stupid mental mistake for the Jaguars where they get a 15-yard penalty that gives the Vikings an automatic first down and they can kneel it so they don't even get their Hail Mary. So all in all, lots to be happy about with the defense, right? The offense, not so happy with it, but I feel like we're going to go through this one and like be happier than we thought. So there are some difference makers on offense that I think deserve their flowers. And then we'll get to the ugly Sam Darnold part. That'll be next. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan, it's not just a hobby. It's something that you, as many people that I met today did, travel across the country for, maybe even across the world for. I met a Vikings fan from Germany today. And it takes a lot of energy to do all of that, power through, stay up, yell for 3 hours. That's why they've created the Stand the Fan 5-hour energy shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like you. The fans who are first in the parking lot and last to leave, we see you. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or just ironing out your jersey, your game day to-do list is a mile long, and you need energy to get through all that stuff. So the limited edition Stand the Fan 5-hour energy shot is here to keep you fueled throughout the season. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks, the best place to play daily fantasy football. At prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl, you can use code all lowercase locked on NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks is not daily fantasy, as you may have been familiar with it from the old days where you have to set up a whole lineup and you have to pick a whole bunch of things that you don't really like. No, it's just you versus the house. Pick 2 to 6 of your favorite players and whether they'll do better or worse than their PrizePicks projection. And bam, if you're right on all of it, you can win up to 100 times your money. I've been having a ton of fun on PrizePicks all year long. It has been such a great time and a great way to add a little extra enjoyment to those primetime games that I otherwise have absolutely no stake in. I can put a quick PrizePicks lineup in, and now I got something to watch all night. So once again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and use code lockedonnfl to get $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks, run your game. Moving on here with this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. So, the offense. Let's talk. Let's face the music. So here's the difficult and nuanced thing here. The offense moved the ball incredibly, and what you keep seeing, what I've been seeing online, and what you'll probably see in the newspaper or wherever it is that you consume most of your information about the Vikings, you'll see all these ridiculous factoids, like that the Vikings got no touchdowns in this game. They win 12-7, 4 field goals, no touchdowns in this game, and 3 turnovers, and they win the game, and nobody's done that since 2006. And they did so many things in this game that haven't been done since 2006. So many weird things. And I could regale you with all of those little fun bar trivia facts, but let's get down to brass tacks here. The Vikings moved the ball. At will, they moved the ball. Aaron Jones, I think, ends up just shy of a 100-yard game, and he missed a bunch of the game. He got what I'm going to say looked to me like a Charlie horse, and he gets carted off. He comes back later in the game, and he does like mop-up duty, so they clearly aren't worried about that long-term. And that goes great. TJ Hawkinson ends up with 80 yards. I think he converts like 5 or 6 third downs to TJ Hawkinson. It was just third and Hawkinson all day long. Justin Jefferson, relatively quiet day, but everybody else kind of popped off, and the offense really moved. So my major hypothesis, I guess, my major question I want to ask when I really go watch this tape and slow it all down, and this is what it looked like to my live eye, was that this was a game where a team overcommitted to stopping Jefferson, got that, and then gave up 420 yards. And it's like, that's not a good plan, right? That doesn't actually work. But I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody look at this game, see it as the way to slow the Vikings offense because of only 12 points, and then be like, oh, They actually moved the ball really well, and they just got a bunch of stupid picks. Okay, well, I don't know if we can replicate that, right? Like, then you just go back to the thing everybody's going to bring to a Vikings game, which is we got to get our turnovers against Sam Darnold. We'll get to Sam Darnold, don't worry. But there's a lot to really like. I think Hawkinson and Josh Oliver, I think they were the leading receivers of the team. Josh Oliver ends up with like 60 some yards and Hawkinson ends up with like 80 some yards. So tight ends just absolutely pop off in this one. That has been a theme for the Jaguars all year. I'm sure Tony Wiggins over on Locked On Jags is saying, oh my God, we got our butts kicked by tight ends again. I think the offensive line did a pretty good job. I'm not going to say a perfect job. There were some pressures, but I think pretty good on the whole, considering that Sam Darnold was holding the ball forever. And it feels to me like every problem that happened on offense funnels all the way back to Darnold. This is my initial impression of this game. And for those of you who have been everydayers for a long time, you know the way that I approach these things is I have my initial impression and I share them right here in the moments right after the show or right after the game or the night right after the game. And then later I'll go look at tape and be like, oh my God, I was totally wrong. Here's how I was wrong. And that might be what Wednesday is. I might say, oh my God, so many other things went wrong. Sam Darnold didn't actually do that bad. Here's why. And maybe, right? But right now, as it feels like to me, Hawkinson, fantastic game. Addison, I think, was open a lot all day. Got missed a couple times by bad Darnold throws. Could have had a much bigger day than he had. Aaron Jones, the run game did great. I think the O-line did at worst fine. Maybe you even would call it a positive game on the whole against guys like Josh Allen. I think Cam Robinson killed Josh Hines Allen. I tried to hone in on that matchup a little bit, here and there at times when I remembered to. And oh my God, every single time it was just like total wall. So I think Cam Robinson had a couple of penalties against his old team. So I'm sure that'll like sink any grading metrics that you want to look at. But I felt pretty happy about the game that he had. Maybe you had a couple of pressures up the interior that you didn't like. But my instinct is that they were too few and far between for you to look at that as like the reason the offense failed. And again, the offense didn't fail. It moved the ball. 3 red zone interceptions and still having an almost even, or by some measures, an exactly even EPA per play kind of tells you everything. And it's a little bit, besides that, how was the play Mrs. Lincoln, right? There's just a little bit of that to it, but it tells you that when it wasn't Sam Darnold specifically doing something really dumb, they were killing it. And that gives me some optimism, even though the last 2 games, right? The Vikings have 21 last week, 12 this week. So they have 33 points in 2 games. That's not a good clip against, 2 AFC South teams that aren't supposed to be good. But I would argue that those 2 teams are probably better on defense than on offense. And that's probably more why they lost their games is their offenses. So call it 2, good enough defenses, and you're kind of slumping offensively a little bit right now. But if you look deeper into the bones of those games, you will find that the normal down-to-down stuff is going very well. And there are key mistakes undoing that progress. But it's going to be like, you'll find a divergence, to put it mathematically. You'll find a divergence between success rate and EPA, right? Success rate, just asking yes or no, was that play successful by whatever measure we have for success, and EPA, which, actually puts a degree to that amount of success. How much did this help you? How much did this hurt you? And when those 2 things diverge, it tells you that you got 9 good plays and 1, play that's 9 times as bad as any other play. And then it evens out, right? And historically, the things that sustain are going to be the 9 good plays. Right? The whatever happened most of the time is going to be the thing that keeps happening more, versus turnovers not being sustainable and all that. But for Sam Darnold, turnovers have been sustainable. And we have to kind of come to Jesus here about what we truly do expect from Sam Darnold as a quarterback and how happy we can be. But the other thing, before I get into that, the other thing I wanted to mention is that because the down-to-down stuff was going very well, I think a lot of the best moments for the Vikings came on a staple play call, whether it was just a zone run at the end of the game where the Vikings needed to convert a 3rd and 7 to ice it, and they get basically to the line of scrimmage on a zone. They just zone run. They were probably happy to just run 40 seconds off and punt it, because it would have given the Jags the ball back with like 20 seconds on their own side of the field, and you're Hail Marying, right? And Aaron Jones, that play goes very well. Aaron Jones almost gets a first down, fights really hard for it, and gets, a whistle blow, forward progress stopped, and in the kind of like spillover physicality, that's where the skirmish happens at the end, and the refs call a 15-yarder on the Jags there, which gives the Vikings the first down. So like the fact like that zone run did probably get stopped up about an inch short, but it was still successful enough, right, to like expose you to that situation. And it was, almost converting on 3rd and 7. That's a good run. That felt like a clutch play to me, a very clutch moment. And if you want the moment that I think really defined this one, which I liked, I was doing that more earlier in the season, but the moment that defined this one for me came after the first interception that Sam Darnold threw, the tipped one that we'll get into, that the defense kind of went 3 and out, punted it back, and then the Vikings drove the ball all the way down. So that is to say, the staples worked. The staples were good. And then you get into the red zone and you call this like triple reverse throwback crazy nonsense. All the big mistakes that happened felt like just like Icarus's wings melting. It just always felt like this over aggression. And I think the play calling lesson has to be, because, you win and you get to learn a lesson, right? If you're Kevin O'Connell, you're looking in the mirror, you're saying, what did I learn from this one? It's when the easy stuff works, just keep doing the easy stuff. Aggression is great, but when you're gashing them on the ground, zone can be an aggressive play call. If it's getting 8 yards a pop, that can be that can give you the same spoils as a more aggressive, like a shot play call. You don't always need to go for it all in one bite. And I think ultimately, if O'Connell doesn't learn that lesson, and he's not going to instill that same philosophy in Sam Darnold either, those two guys absolutely see eye to eye on this aggression thing, that will ultimately be this team's undoing, whether it's in the postseason or before it, is that they will get punished too much for their greed, and they'll drop a game that they could have had if they just chilled out a little bit. They have to learn that lesson, or else that will happen to them. So enough stalling. Okay, let's talk about these 3 Sam Darnold interceptions. I'll go into as much detail as I can about them after the fact, and kind of what maybe we think we should or shouldn't do in response to them. So that will all be next. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off of gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with the promo code NFL. They have 5 generations of experience, and they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience. And the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks make it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL and a $30 reward when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you want to get in on the Grambles this time of year, it's the holiday season, you're going to be watching some football with perhaps people you don't want to hang out with. If you want something to distract you from that time, why don't you go fire up a Gramble at FanDuel? I hope you got in on the TJ Hawkinson action. He had all kinds of profitable alt lines in this game, ended up, I believe, hitting the 80 mark, if not absolutely hit the 70 mark. And if you want to get in on that kind of stuff, you can go, of course, to FanDuel.com. And you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So if you want to do a really conservative alt line just to win that $5 bet, and you can get $150 back in bonus bets to get you started, that's something that I think is a pretty good idea, actually. So head on over to FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook, and make every moment more. All right, moving on with this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. Let's get into it. All right, Sam Darnold throws 3 interceptions. How mad are we at? Okay, I want you to put in your mind, how mad are we? How mad am I? On a scale of 1 to 10, how mad am I? Put it in your brain. There's no wrong answers, whatever you feel. And then let's talk them out, and let's see if we still feel the same, right? Okay, we're going to therapize it. So I come away with this game feeling very much like Sam Darnold is the sole issue offensively in this game. And if Sam Darnold had played even a reasonably better game, like not like the below average game instead of a catastrophic one, the Vikings would have been walking away, third quarter, we would have been flipping channels. But that's not how we went, right? We had not only the interceptions, but we had some misses. We had, I thought, some timing issues. I think some pocket management issues. Everything was going wrong for Sam Darnold. So much so that you get like votes of confidence in the locker room speech from Kevin O'Connell afterward. He's like, Sam, you're the guy. We all know you're the guy, right? You didn't have a good game when the coach has to say that. So the first interception was tipped. It was a slant to Justin Jefferson, and I don't blame him for that one too much. I do think you might want to progress there. You might want to be a little bit less of a robot about it. But here's the way that it works, the way I understand that these slants work, right? When you're running a slant to Justin Jefferson, the timing of that's really important because the window that will be open is very short. So you have to throw that thing before you know it's open. So you kind of just have to put that thing in a spot at a time when it's supposed to be, and then hope that Justin Jefferson wins his rep. It's Justin Jefferson. You shouldn't be too worried about that. You can probably place your trust in that. In this case, he didn't win the rep. It got tipped up. It got intercepted. What I will say, though, is against certain cornerback leverages and certain patterns of the release, it's reasonable to progress there, I think. And there are other things in that in any play that's a slant, you can progress. It is not a forced thing in the same way a bubble screen is. You have to throw it where that is, or you turf it, and that's all there is on the play. No, on a slant, you can try other stuff, right? You can progress. And so I think it might be reasonable to ask him to progress there. And that was my initial thought. I think that's what I tweeted was like, you got to progress there, dude. But I'm open to the idea of looking at that and saying, timing play, you just need Jefferson to win that route. So whose fault that was, I'll put a pin in for now. I am probably going to end up saying that it's Sam Darnold's fault, but I'll leave myself open to see what I see. Even though it was a tipped one. The second one happened in the red zone. This one sucks. This was another one where it felt like this probably shouldn't have been an interception. It was another kind of long pocket thing. Darnold sort of loads one up. He's trying to get, I think it was Naylor coming across the middle of the field, and it just gets undercut. It's a really bad throw. It deserves to be an interception, I think is maybe what I'll say. The player who intercepted it, who I did not catch who that was, I apologize, got his hands under it, but it sort of squirted out the back of his elbow on the way down, hits the ground. And as this thing is getting reviewed, everyone that was around us in the stadium, Vikings or Jags fan, was like, oh yeah, that's getting overturned. Like everybody was like, crap. And then the stadium showed it once and then didn't show it again, which is always telltale when you're when the home stadium doesn't want to show it. And then they end up saying call stands. I think that's a very bad call. I'm not going to like mince words and be like, oh, interesting call. No, I think that one just sucks. I just don't think that's the right call at all. It's easier to get over that one, both because the Vikings won, so it didn't turn out to be, deciding, which if say the Jaguars at the end, when they were driving way at the end and you ended up with that Cam Bynum interception, if that did turn into touchdown Jaguars and the Vikings lost, you're going, man, if only they had that one field goal from that really botched review call, right? Like that would have stung a lot more, but it doesn't, and that's the way we live. But also it just deserved so bad to be an interception that it's like, well, I guess ball don't lie. But that neither of those factors make that call any more correct. That call was incorrect, bar none. I hate it. You lose control of the ball, it hits the ground. That should be incomplete 1,000,000%. Saying that's like you technically don't have enough evidence for that, I think is awful. Especially something like the replay where you have some time to like really slow down and get that thing right. That's the whole point of it. You can take a minute versus somebody's live eye. Like if a ref live didn't see that, that you would never ever call that wrong, right? Like you would never ever be that mad if the ref live was like didn't see that tiny little bobble. That's what replay is supposed to grab. But it's not someone's live eye. Somebody was replaying it, got it that wrong. I think that sucks. But when you see that defensive back lurking and like ready to like cut underneath your route, you just can't throw that ball. And he threw it low, which is how, like he knew it was dangerous because he threw it low trying to get it away from that guy. But low wasn't enough. And if anything, it helped the defensive back keep Jalen Naylor out of the thing. So it was very wrong stuff. And it was a very forcing thing to do. And it came after this was every single drive offensively, right? They marched down the field easily. There was a point, I know the broadcast showed a hilarious graphic where there was a point in the game where the Vikings had run more plays inside of Jaguars territory, or maybe inside the Jaguars 30, than the Vikings had, or than the Jaguars had run plays at all, which is like wild. I think they had 7 trips inside the 30-yard line and no touchdowns to show for it. That's an abysmal red zone showing. And having 2 of those or 3 of those end in interceptions and almost a 4th in an interception, but it got called back on a defensive hands to the face penalty, is a really, really bad day. So the final one that we'll go into here was, again, Sam Darnold forcing an issue he didn't need to force. And it sort of ties into this thing about O'Connell being overly aggressive, but he was throwing a corner route versus red cover 2. So cover 2 in the red zone changes a little bit. When you're in cover 2 normally, those 2 half safeties, they're coached to get on the roof, is the way I've heard it said. You got to get yourself all the way on the roof. You backpedal really far. You need to give yourself infinite cushion so that nothing can get behind you. No receiver can ever, ever, ever take a step of grass that you aren't in front of. In the red zone, you don't have the room to do that backpedaling, so you play it a little differently. You play yourself on the goal line, or maybe, a couple yards into the goal line, or every team kind of has different rules for this. And so you don't have that depth. So if you want to talk turkey hole, right? You probably know, or honey hole, some people call it. You probably have heard that on a broadcast here or there. That's the hole between that deep safety and then the cornerback who's playing underneath. If you throw to the sideline over that cornerback and far enough to the side where the safety can't get it, you can actually find a hole in cover 2 there, right? It's a tough throw, but you can make it. That's what we were trying to do on that. But that safety is not playing so deep that you can cut a corner route under him, like in normal cover 2. This is red 2. You got to play it different. And to try to force it in anyways is like shirking situation and forgetting the context of the moment that you are in just to kind of do what normally happens here. It's a little autopilot to me, and it's forcing. It's overly aggressive. It's forcing the issue. Just run duo. All you got to do is run duo. And then I'll briefly speak on the 4th one. This was another one where it was like a shot play. It was a post to Addison. It was underthrown. DB makes a great play on it. And he gets up, runs it back. For what it's worth, I think he would have been called down there if the play had stood. He runs all the way back and is like getting close to a pick 6, and then and the Vikings get the ball back. They would have lost, I think, like 10 yards of field position, but it would have been 1st and 10 again because the possession switched. So it all kind of worked out, but it was that one was just like, again, a bad throw. And like, why are we going for it all in one bite now? Why are we going for this game-breaking shot play? They can't stop your normal stuff. And I think we have to see that lesson, that they couldn't stop the normal stuff. And the Colts was the same way. They couldn't stop the normal stuff. So just stick with the normal stuff. It's okay to be a boring offensive coordinator if boring works. And you have all those crazy plays to bust out as soon as the boring stuff stops working. Because guess what? When the boring stuff stops working, and I'm not just talking about run plays here, I'm talking about your classic choice routes, your flag bow, your speed outs, your stick, your staple passing concepts, the stuff you put in your opening drives. Those concepts, like why choice got both Josh Oliver and TJ Hawkinson explosive plays, big chunks, 15, 20 yards. Though that's your normal stuff. That's your regular crap. And you were getting chunks off of it. So just keep spamming that. And once they adjust something so that stuff doesn't work, odds are they're giving up a big play over the top. In the press conference after the game, Kevin O'Connell said, well, they were basically in too high all day. So it gave us a chance to run the ball really well, and it gave us a chance to do all that. And if they're in too high all day, and you're able to put that into, and you're able to move the ball on that as easily as you are, why would you encourage them to get out of it? Why test it? Just keep doing the thing they're letting you do and let them lose the game on a strategy they thought was good to stop Justin Jefferson. because a 20-yard Justin Jefferson stat line and an L is not something that other teams are going to want to replicate. That's my rant about the aggression of the Vikings. Here's the deal. If this even worked, I apologize if there's like stutters or stops when I'm on hotel Wi-Fi. Sometimes the StreamYard cuts out, but we'll be back to normal tomorrow. We'll do the mailbag. I'll put out the call for questions. So I will see you all for that. And as always, Skull.